So given the circumstances, and hoping that by next week we don't get a second chance,
What does that mean? We don't get a second chance?
that we don't get a second chance to talk about Corona, because nobody will remember it by next week,
We'll be
hopefully, because everything can happen, and we always expect the best. And one of the signs of the Rebbe's teachings and the Hasidic teachings having affected a person is that they're always positive, they're always optimistic. So that's the first thing we need to talk about this optimism. And just mention, when I came here, I drove I took a cab because I didn't have my car, and for the 20-minute ride, all I did was talk to the cab driver about being optimistic. And when he looked like an optimistic guy to begin with, so I don't think I did so much. But he said to me at the end, this has been the most important conversation I've had in the last few days. You really encouraged me, and this and that. And the most important thing that, we've been saying this so much, because faith and confidence is exactly about that, is to think good and it will be good. That here there's nothing that we can do, but we can certainly see a way out of this. And every person can certainly see a way out of this. And I think by now most people understand what the way out is, and that it doesn't continue to propagate among people. So it gets stopped for whatever reason, and it gets stopped, and that's it, and it's over. So it's really something that's very similar to bad thoughts, the negative thoughts. That if you get a negative thought, stay at home and don't share it with anybody. There's no reason to give it to somebody else. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from this outbreak, or as the WHO loves to scare us, this pandemic.
Well, of course, that's their job.
Because right, and it's true. Sometimes to get results, you have to scare people, at least to some degree. So that's what they're doing. They're doing a good job, and hopefully we'll be able to do a good job explaining what this all means spiritually.
I think it's pretty easy. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. So you don't?
Okay, so the clue is, of course, in everything's name. So the fact that this is a type of coronavirus, there's many types of coronaviruses. As people are now joking, don't get coronavirus 19 because number 20 is coming out in 6 months, right? So hold off, don't get this one. Get the next one, it'll be a lot better to have 3 cameras instead of 2. But apart from that not happening, hopefully. So the word corona, of course, comes from crown, and what this means is that God is revealing a different aspect of what He is, and it's an aspect we're not used to. So because we're not used to it, it seems to us to be very confusing and unclear.
Is it din?
No.
What is it?
Not at all. So we'll explain exactly what it is. The crown, as opposed to the sfirot underneath, from wisdom down to kingdom, we call it a surrounding light. And we've talked a lot about this. So in faith and confidence, crown is the source of faith, of course. As the source of faith, what it means is that faith is beyond, it's a power that I have that is beyond me. It didn't come from me. It doesn't come from my actions. It doesn't come from my efforts. In other words, every person has faith, and it's a question of just uncovering it, but not increasing it or perfecting it or anything like that. Faith is something that already exists, and it needs to be revealed. That's as opposed to the other sfirot, from wisdom down to kingdom, that they represent faculties of the psyche and faculties of the soul that require actual work to perfect. They depend on our work. So if I'll have a lot of wisdom or a little bit of wisdom, if I'm able to gain wisdom from every person that I talk to, or whether I can only gain wisdom from somebody who's infinitely smarter than me and I can appreciate their wisdom, that depends on how much self-nullification I've built inside myself. The more self-nullification I have, the more I'm able to listen to somebody with nullification, to really listen to what they're saying. So like Shlomo Melech, King Solomon says, you can learn and be wise from any person, even from a young child. You just have to listen to it. So for me to become wise, to have the true faculty of wisdom, to be able to hear wisdom from anybody, requires work. It's not something that I just discover in myself. One day I open up and say, wow, I didn't know I could hear all this. It's not like some kind of shudder that I have in my ears. It's something that I have to change in my mind. But when it comes to faith, faith is different. Faith is there in full force all the time, waiting for us to uncover it. So it's in the dark right now.
In the what?
It's in the dark. It's unrevealed. So that's how the crown is considered in Chassidus, in Jewish psychology. Especially the highest part of the crown, which is our faculty of faith. So if this thing is called corona, it means that everything it's come to do is to reveal a hidden facet of reality that, because of how we live our lives, and especially how you live life in the modern world, because of very strong individualism and because of capitalism and many other things, we have a feeling that it's all up to us and that it's up to us to do certain things. But here, the corona comes to reveal a different aspect of life, which is about revealing something higher than ourselves, not something that comes from our efforts. So to say it in other words, the simple way to combat this is not to do anything, right? It's like very strange. It's exactly what we say about prohibitive mitzvot. That lo ta'aseh, meaning you shouldn't do so and so, do not do so and so and so on, that's exactly what corona is like. It comes from the same place. And we say in general that the prohibitive mitzvot, they reveal God's surrounding light. That's what it's called. His surrounding nature. And what does it mean that he's surrounding? It's as opposed to being straight. Remember, we have the metaphor that we've been using a lot for faith and confidence of the circle being faith and the straight line being confidence. So corona is related to the circle. It's not even surprising that, I don't know where they got this picture, it's probably an artist's rendition, but it's just a circle, it's just a sphere. It's a sphere that has some protrusions on it. But the idea that it's a sphere, maybe that's like every virus, or I don't know. The truth is,
but it's making it known. It's a circle.
Yeah, but everybody. This is the first time, when they had the Black Plague, which was a very big organism.
The bubonic?
Yeah, the bubonic plague. It's not a virus, from what I remember. I think it's a very big. It's bacteria, if I'm not mistaken, and it's many times bigger. They didn't have a poster to put around. Like now you can put a poster, wanted.
Somebody was a coronavirus for Purim.
Right.
They had the spikes out.
Right. So now we have a picture of who this is and what they want. Who is this and what does he want? Yeah. So, but strangely, again, to combat it, what you do is nothing.
That's interesting.
Just don't go out.
Yeah,
That's it.
So hard.
Even if you have it, you shouldn't do anything. Now there's a thing, I don't know if this is true or not, if somebody needs to check this. It was going around from France that the reason that they've had a lot of severe cases with young people is because these people took ibuprofen to deal with their fever. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know enough to understand. They claim there's prednisone and ibuprofen, or there's something like that.
Do you remember why? If there's some way it interferes with it, makes it multipliers?
But it makes sense that there's some relationship to prednisone because ibuprofen works on the kidneys. And we've already talked about the relationship between the kidneys and the adrenal glands. So it might be that it is related. I'm not sure exactly how it works. So prednisone is something that weakens the immune system. That's what it's used for. So if somebody has a inflammation that won't go away, you get a prednisone shot, because prednisone in high quantities it mitigates the immune system, makes it weak. It's like cortisone. Same thing. Prednisone is a form of cortisone. Prednisone is just the generic brand name.
So
Okay. Anyway,
wait a minute, why do you want to
so
make it weaker to get
I
rid
don't
of
know
something?
enough. I don't know enough to say whether it's true or not. It makes some sense to me that it would weaken the immune system, and maybe it's connected, but find out for yourself. I don't know. In any case, you're not supposed to do anything. You don't have to do anything. Just stay at home. No,
Right.
and that's not what I'm saying.
No,
I'm
that's what
saying
they're saying.
that it's like a prohibitive mitzvah. That all you need to do to stop this is stay at home. And you don't do shev ve'al ta'aseh, it's called. Don't do. Sit at home and don't do anything. And if you sit at home and you don't do anything, in 2 weeks it'll be gone. That's how it works. That's just how it works.
No.
You hear the
You can
story
still
about
do it.
Rambam? Yeah, the Rambam and this Arab doctor. The Sultan wanted to choose between the two of them. So he said, okay, you give each other poison, whoever survives.
Why is this going to
Because what did the Rambam do? He said to his...
Put it in his mind.
No, he said, just lie me down. I'm not going to move.
Ah,
And he didn't move. And the
No, it's
poison
much more
went to
that
him.
wasn't. Yeah, that
And
wasn't
Much
the
more
other guy
complex.
died.
the punchline.
Much
That
more
wasn't the punchline.
Yeah, but he just
It's not the same
he
stuff.
just lay there. And he didn't
Again,
die.
it's like a prohibitive mitzvah. And just like prohibitive mitzvahs, they touch the crown, they go up to a higher place, they reveal Hashem's surrounding light, not his inner light. And again, the difference is that there are levels of the soul that can only be accessed by not doing. Meaning I can't perfect them, I can't make them any stronger by doing something. On the contrary, the way I strengthen them is by revealing them, by making space. Okay? That's the nature of the crown in general. For the crown to be revealed, by the way, something that we've learned a lot in Torah to Nefesh, is, actually I don't know if I learned it with this group, but when we learned the different intelligences, the types of intelligence,
Right, that was the other
so we
class.
talked about how self-nullification, how chokhmah bittul, it's actually yesterday's Tanya, how chokhmah and bittul is what makes the infinite light appear. When a person has self-nullification, the higher aspects of his soul can appear in his life. When a person doesn't have self-nullification, it's like he shuts himself off from these higher surrounding aspects of the soul. The two surrounding aspects of the soul are called the living one and the singular one, chaya and yichida, but that's in parentheses. So what we want to get to now is, what is the main difference between something that comes from the crown, the surrounding light, and the light that fills our worlds, the light that's like a ray that enters into our being, that is felt, that's integrated into our lives? What's the main difference between the two of them? So the main difference is, and this is how it's described in Chassidus, is that relatively speaking, what enters into us is orderly. It's ordered. Like we've been talking about the line, there's a story to what I'm doing, right? I'm putting it together. That's confidence. That's the line that's coming down. But the faith is chaotic, relatively speaking. It's a form of chaos. Okay? It's very important. We're not saying that it's chaos in the sense that everything goes. We're saying it's chaotic in the sense that it's anti-order.
Huh.
It just fights order. It doesn't like order for a lot of reasons.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Okay? This is the crux of what we're going to
That's
talk
funny
about.
because we're supposed to be making.
In other words, this is the best preparation.
To not be ordered.
To not be ordered. Because the whole thing, why do we call it the Seder night? Order in Hebrew is Seder. Why do we call it Leila Seder? Why Seder? Because we try somehow to make some kind of order in the chaos. Because when we came out of Egypt, all the lights came out together. It was all surrounding light. There was no inner light. There was nothing to be integrated. It couldn't be integrated. That's why the Pesach that they celebrated in Egypt was a one-time thing. We never do that again. Right? We don't do that because they ate matzah and chametz at the same time. It was all mixed up. There were many things that they did that we can't do. Because the Pesach Mitzrayim is a one-time event. It was very chaotic. And it was all about leaving Egypt. The Pesach that we do is an attempt to take those lights of chaos and to order them in some way. So that's why we have the Agada, which tries in 15 steps to put it together into some kind of order. These 15 steps, there's a lot to talk about what they are, but they're called the 15 contact points in the human body, the Chamesli Yesodot. We've talked about this once when we talked about some other system of beliefs in the world. And anyway, let's leave it for now. So, anything that comes from the crown is anti-order. So, usually when I say, how many types of categories of order are there in the world? So you could come up with all kinds of explanations, all kinds of orders. We have one that's very clear. The Rambam and the Rasag, all the early philosophers agreed that there are 5 categories of order in the world. Okay? And now we're going to look at them, at the 5 categories, and we're also going to see how Corona disrupts each one of them and what you can take from them. Because there's a lesson in the disruption of order. Because we have to know how to disrupt order also. For instance, when a person has a bad habit, and habits, like we know, they're confidence. They come from the line that I'm used to doing something in a certain way. To break that habit, I have to know how to disrupt order. The whole world, the way it's been run for the last 2,000 years, is pretty ordered, but we know that this order is not exactly what God wants. So there has to be some disruption of it. It doesn't have to be destroyed, God forbid, but there has to be some ability to disrupt things, to think out of the box, as they call it. So it's true on the personal level. It's also true on the general level. So let's look at these 5 types of order. So first we'll read them, translated them from Saadia Gaon. These are my translations. I don't know if somebody else would agree with them. And Maimonides. Maimonides has a book. Saadia Gaon, it's in the introduction. It wasn't even written by him. It was written by his translator. The 5 categories of order in his book Emunot V'Deot. And Maimonides, it's in a very important book, which was the first book that he wrote. We've mentioned it a few times. It's called The Principles of Logic. Basically, when he was 15 or 14, after he had finished reading all of Aristotle, he wrote a short treatise on logic, on everything that he had taken from Greek philosophy. And there he summarizes everything, and he has a chapter, I believe it's chapter 14, I'm not sure exactly, need to look at it again, I haven't seen it in a while, where he gives these 5 types of order. So what are they? They're called causal order. Here it's called precedence, because when you think about order, it just means that one thing precedes the other. So there's causal order, intellectual order.
Wait a minute, wait.
They're here, they're on your page. You don't have to write them down, they're right in front of you. Natural order, temporal order, and hierarchical or bureaucratic order. Okay? And we'll now explain what each one of them means. Causal order means cause and effect. That the cause precedes the effect. Now, a lot of people will make the mistake, and it's a common mistake, that this means precedence sounds to us like time. So it seems to us that when I say the cause precedes the effect, that means that the cause comes before the effect. That's not a different type of order. To say order means that the cause always precedes the effect, even if in practice the effect came before the cause. Okay?
Say that sentence again. The effect.
We tend to associate all types of order with time, with temporal order, which here is the 4th one. So we say 1999 came before the year 2000. Now, if there was a cause before an effect, so we tend to think about it as if the cause happened before in time and the effect came after in time. But that doesn't have to be the case. Sometimes, and we know this in modern physics, it works this way in many places, The cause temporally comes after the effect. But how do I know it's a cause? Because logically it's still the cause of something that happened. Even if that something that happened before the cause. What's an example of something like this?
Was invented before.
So this is very important because on this lies
Chicken and
the
egg.
whole feeling that the world
Came
has a
first, the chicken and
purpose.
the egg.
What does it mean that something has a purpose? When will the purpose be revealed? At the end. So let's say I'm building a house. What's the cause for building the house? That I want to live in it. When will I be able to live in it?
When it's done.
Long time after all the effects. Because the cause was, I want to live in it.
Mm-hmm.
The effect is that I buy a plot of land and I make a hole in the ground and I put a cement in and I start building it until I finish it. So the cause came a long time before the effect. That's one of the principles of Greek logic, and it's still true. It's true in Torah also. It's called Sof Maaseh B'Machshava Tchila. That the end of the act came first. Meaning the purpose of why I did this was calculated, was thought about before what I actually did. So the cause, which will be revealed only at the end, actually existed in my mind already in the beginning. But in terms of temporal revelation, there's a lot of effects that come out of this cause that will be revealed a long time before the cause will be revealed.
It's for many things. Going to university.
Anything
many
that
things.
right, anything that has purpose, anything that the human mind usually thinks of, is that first I think of the cause, and then I do the effects. But practically speaking, the effects will therefore come before the cause, because in the order of revelation, first I'll do all the effects until I come to the cause, until I reveal the cause at the end. Somebody would say, but the cause in your mind is already something. It's not, because living in the house, in this case, is the purpose. That was the cause of building, the purpose of building the house in the first place. So that's very important about causal precedence. Okay? What's the example that the Rambam gives? He gives the example of the sun is the cause of sunlight. You can't have sunlight unless you have the sun. Here's a beautiful example of cause and effect. Because in the order in creation, what came first? The light or the sun? The light first came, and then the sun was created. But causally, the sun is the cause of the light. Okay? What's intellectual precedence? The second type of precedence. The second type of order. Second type of order is that the wise man precedes the fool. What do I mean by precedes here? This is not a cause. The wise man doesn't create a fool. It's just saying that we have intellectual order. There's somebody who's higher and somebody who's lower. It has nothing to do with time. We don't even associate this usually with time.
So proceeds isn't really the right word.
That's exactly the right word. Precedes.
Why?
Because precedes here is in different categories of order. Order is just, think of it as a line, and you can plot different things on this line. So let's say I put the wise man on the left, the fool will be all the way at the end on the right. Okay, so if I say I'm going from left to right, so the wise man precedes the fool. Then we have natural precedence. What does natural precedence mean? It's what we call that the simple precedes the complex. Why is it called natural precedence? Because our tendency when we look at nature is to assume that nature goes from the simple to the complex. That's basically what we call evolutionary thinking. So right away, just from the fact that evolutionary thinking is based on one of these orders, understanding is that the simple precedes the complex. Nature goes from the simple to the complex. Then we have temporal precedence. This is the order that we're used to. The order of time. That the year 1999 became before 2000, and so on. And then we have the final type of order or precedence, which is called hierarchical or bureaucratic. That when you want something done, right, so you can go to the clerk at the front desk, or if it's not getting done, so you keep going higher and higher in the ranks until you finally come to somebody who's high enough and can get it done. So that's what we call hierarchical precedence. So these five, they correspond to the Sfirot themselves, to the 5 parts of God's essential name, Havaya. And what we're saying now, this is all what we call light that's contained inside something, meaning it's light that fills all worlds. This is what we call
Is that imminent light?
immanent light, right? As opposed to transcendent light.
But as opposed to surrounding light?
Right.
I thought we were talking
The
about
surrounding light makes everything equal, so there's no beginning and end. That's why we use the circle as a symbol for surrounding light.
But it's inside the circle.
No, it's a line inside the circle. The symbol is a line for the immanent light, for confidence, for everything that has to do with integrated light, the integrated revelation of Hashem. We have the symbol of a line. Everything that has to do with surrounding light, the symbol is a circle.
But you started out talking about surrounding light.
Right. We're now explaining what this disrupts, what Corona disrupts. It disrupts these 5 types of line, or these 5 types of order. If I say it disrupts order, and I know a little bit, so I ask what type of order is it disrupting? So it's disrupting these all 5 types of order. Okay? Okay. So let's see how it disrupts it. Hierarchical. You would think that whoever's on top would get sick later. But what happened? What did we see? The people who were the highest up in rank were the first ones to get sick. So the reason is very simple, because they shake hands a lot more. That's all it is.
Really?
It's that simple. But it disrupts the order, because you would expect things to propagate from above to below. But here it goes backwards. That whoever's higher up is the first one to get sick. Again, it's a very simple and meaningless reason, as it were. But that's how viruses proliferate. That's how they spread, through handshaking. So the people who shook hands a lot, they got sick first. So it disrupted hierarchical order.
You said the whole Iranian
Okay.
thing?
Okay.
They're all sick.
Not only do
They hug.
they hug and they kiss. So it makes it even worse.
And they didn't put a ban on it.
Temporal precedence. This is a big one. Because what we're doing now is an effect for the cause. The cause, the purpose we want, is to break the proliferation. And this is one that's hard for people to wrap their heads around. We're not doing things now, isolating ourselves, because it's dangerous at this moment for me to catch it. It's probably not. Why are we isolating ourselves? We're doing the effect before the cause, because the purpose is to stop it from spreading. To wipe it out. That's how you wipe it out. So you do things before you come to the cause. Eventually you'll come to the cause. The natural precedence is the simple comes before the complex. Here we have something exactly the opposite. A virus is not even alive.
It isn't?
It's not even considered a living thing, because it has no metabolism.
Really?
It's just a piece of DNA or RNA. The way it lives, it doesn't live. The way it functions is by entering into cells in the body and just reproducing itself, just copying itself. But it's not alive. So here we have something that's the simplest possible thing in the world, and you can't fight it. You would think that the most dangerous things in the world are the most complex. But it turns out that the simpler you are, the more you disrupt the order from simple to complex.
It never was alive.
And
But
still
that's
isn't.
how they die out.
What?
But that's how they fizzle. Czars, all that stuff. It dies out.
No, it doesn't die.
Why did they die?
It doesn't
This
die.
one's supposed to stay
Because
It
around.
doesn't die.
all these things.
No, it
they-
doesn't die. It just can't. It can't spread. That's all. Because the body builds immunity to any kind of virus. Given enough time, it'll build immunity, unless it's too violent. This one's not so violent, as it turns out, and the body builds immunity to it. So eventually, it dies out. You call it dies out, but really, it's not alive. It just can't proliferate. The intellectual precedence here says that the wise man comes before the fool. So there are differences between people, right? But what does this do? It obliterates the differences. There's no difference. It doesn't care whether you're smart or dumb. Everybody, when it comes to prohibitive actions, just sit at home. It's actually easier for somebody who's simple and not so smart to sit at home and not do anything. But in any case, it just infects everybody the same way. There's no difference. So it strikes that out. The causal precedence has to do a little bit with what we talked about before. That the cause here is not coming before the effect. We're seeing the effects before the cause. What's going to be the cause if this is big enough? The cause will be the faltering, the complete disruption of our medical services for everything that we need, because the medical services will be so occupied with this virus that they won't have time to do anything else. So we're doing the same thing. We're thinking about the cause before the effect. So all the actions that we're doing in order to isolate, to not allow this to propagate, are really meant because the cause here is coming after the effect. And that's what's so hard it's hard to wrap your head around it. Because we're used to thinking, if I isolate myself, it means that really I won't get it. But that's not the point. The point is nobody will get it. It's a different outlook. It's looking at things from a higher perspective. And all this needs to happen for us to understand a higher aspect of Hashem, which is not about what we do, but rather what we don't do. So for instance, let's take now the handshaking, which is a big deal. Apparently most of it is transferred by handshaking. Some of it, if somebody's already sick, is through sneezing or coughing. But if you're not sick, if you're asymptomatic, the way it spreads is through handshaking. People feel that if I don't let them shake hands, that they're somehow antisocial. So that's one way of looking at it. It might be true, it might not. What's higher? Touching somebody or not touching them? What's a higher show of reverence, of feeling that somebody is special? So in Yiddishkeit, in Torah, we know that, for instance, nobody would touch the Rebbe because he's like a sacred relic. He's sacred. Why? Because his body is holy. So I don't touch him. I can look at somebody else the same way and say, I don't touch you, not because I'm not because I don't want a relationship with you, not because I don't care for you, but rather because I respect you too much. I respect the holiness of the body.
There was that thing that went around about some woman wanted to shake the Rebbe's hand, and he gave her such a beautiful answer.
Right.
And she's stolen, she's holy, and he wouldn't touch
Right.
anything.
So there's a lot of this in Yiddishkeit that I can't go into right now because I mamish have to stop for a minute, and hopefully next time we'll continue.
Why do you have to
Wow,
stop?
we're finishing already?